Hi, beautiful souls. This is Sadhana. Welcome to my channel and welcome back to my deck collection series. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these, and I've had a whole mess of decks out on my table the last couple of days trying to put together some new combos for you, so I hope you enjoy these. The first one we're going to look at today is Kyle Gray's Angels and Ancestors alongside the Ophidia Rosa Tarot, and I haven't had either of these decks out for a long time, and I want to tell you what a pleasure it was just a few moments ago, and actually yesterday as well too, shuffling this deck. It's such a gorgeous deck to have in hand. It's a standard tarot size and just beautiful cardstock for those of you that like to riffle shuffle. And even though it is gilded on the sides, it's just, anyway, feels so good in hand, paper and everything. Lily Moses' artwork looks amazing next to the Ophidia Rosa, and we'll have a look at some of the details and how I think that works so well. So if you look in the background of Lily's work, on a lot of the cards, we have things like, well, on this particular card, you've got this flower of life pattern, and then this may be the Sri Yantra back here. I haven't counted the triangles. And we have all this other symbology. So we have the water symbol, and what here looks a bit like the shape of a dream catcher. We do have keywords, shed old skin. And there are many, many metaphors, many teachings that go with the energy of the snake and, of course, the Kundalini rising and so forth. So you can, with this deck, bring in all kinds of other sacred work. And I'm looking at the snake here as well, too. It's quite uncanny that was the first card that came up next to Nicole's deck. This is the 7 of Wands. And so we can look to traditional associations, we can look to numerology, we can look to the energy of the flowers, and we can also look to the poetry that Nicole has provided for each of the cards as well too, which I will speak to because I think that adds in another dimension. And so it's nice, this first reading, we have no humanoid objects in the reading, because in this deck there are things like glass and different things that come from the human realm. And so when you have cards that are just plant life, I find that this deck reads a lot better. I find that each time I take out Nicole's deck, there's another layer that seems to peel away. It's one of those decks that takes time to work with. It takes time to find that level of comfort. And as I look over at the 10 of Wands, what's coming up for me is the need to release tension. That branch here looks to me like it was fully formed at one time. Maybe it was created by a human, maybe a human created a wreath, or there was something that was placed, near the door, the front door of the house. And the spider naturally created a web on the inside, but for some reason this tension was too much. And so this circle that was created with the branch has broken, but the spider web is still fully formed. It didn't break. And so there's this innate elasticity, this innate force within the spider web that is stronger than the wreath shape, the circle shape that was created by the human to create this garland or something like that. And we have this enduring power of the flowers. The flowers are fully formed and they're fully healthy, and that is going to be, that's temporary. That's not going to last for a long time. The blooms will die. But there's something about the balance of tension between the energy of the spider web and the strength of the wreath or the garland that was created, and then the temporal quality of the flowers. And so it just creates this beautiful energy around the 10 of Wands that might not be there, in another deck, especially if you're looking at, the burnout and the exhaustion of a traditional Waite Smith 10 of Wands, perhaps. And over in the 7, so we have 2 fire cards. So there's a lot of energy in this reading. There's a lot of energy that is required for the Kundalini to rise, for this snake to rise up from the water up to the top of the card. And so this is very much a reading of that energy rising and what happens when that energy rises. And I am reminded of something that came up today, and that as the energy rises, it's really important that the container be strong enough. And if that container is your physical body, That is just really something important to remind yourself of over and over again. The reason why we eat well, the reason why we go for daily walks, the reason why we meditate is so that the container can remain strong. And over here, the container, which was this wreath, wasn't strong enough. It broke. So nature survived. The spiderweb survived, but the container wasn't strong enough and it couldn't contain the energy. So I don't know, it's just a really beautiful metaphor. We also have circle, circle, circle. So that might be speaking to you. And just if you look at it symbolically, that might be something you need to look at as you go forth in your day when you get a reading like that. So there's something about the energy of these two decks that is really, really beautiful. I'm not asking questions during this video. I'm just going to kind of analyze the cards and give you ideas about what I do in readings and how I would, how I work with the cards. So here we have a really strong blue color. We have white buffalo calf woman who's known by other names as well too. And it's just, it's a really beautiful energy, an energy very much of healing. Let go of the need to be right is the key word. But again, with this deck, it's really important to embody and embrace the energy of the card. And we're looking at the energy of the card in relation to the tarot cards on either side, as well as the question, whatever your question was. And so you do have, in this particular reading, you do have an opportunity to work with the facing. So the figure here is facing toward this card. The head of the snake is facing toward that card. This flower in the center is not, though. It's moving in an opposite direction. And this may be part of the flower. It could be a bug, so I might not necessarily bring that in. I don't tend to analyze the flowers too, what I want to say. I don't tend to overanalyze what's going on with the flowers. Sometimes the color will speak to me, and other times I just kind of allow the energy of the cards to rise. So over on the right, we have a really deep purple color, so that might be coming up for you there. And so we have the 8 of Wands. So in the last reading, we had 2 Wands cards as well too. And sometimes I find when I do these readings, there's an energy between from reading to reading. So 8 of Wands feels like a lot. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of fire. And I'm wondering why the butterfly or the moth in the bottom of the card is separated. Why that energy, why it's drawn that way, or why the creator needed to represent it that way. So why are the wings not one piece? Why are they not one unit? And so the flower, this really kind of strong, fully bloomed blossom flower is rising up out of the butterfly. Okay, so the transformation is kind of represented by the flower. And over here is the Queen of Swords, which is it's a really strong energy facing another strong energy in the center. And I think in this particular case, the key word is going to really help you to answer your question. Let go of the need to be right. And the Queen of Swords stands in her own power, with her own voice, with her own experience. And she does not need to prove anything to anybody. And so there's something about the power of this energy coming up in the reading. And so, yeah, so just allow the cards to talk to you and ask questions of the flowers, ask questions of the snakes and the other shapes that are arising. And don't get lost. In this one, I'll go to Nicole's poetry because it's really quite beautiful. Don't get confused. Don't allow yourself to get confused. Just ask the cards to have a conversation, or ask the plants to talk to each other, and it will happen. It's kind of magical how the decks just, I don't know, they say what they need to say. All right, so here we have Stargazer. Wouldn't it be cool if we had a Stargazer lily show up next to the Stargazer card? Set your sights higher. So we're looking at vision, we're looking at clear sight, we're looking at keeping your head, like looking ahead on the path. And here is the 6 of Cups, and we have a star up here. So this is about keeping your mind on the path. And if you read the Six of Cups as kind of looking back into connecting with the past and finding meaning in your present through your past experiences, well, then we have, a message here, right? That the focus needs to be right here, right now on the present. We can look to the stars, but what I want to say, we mustn't be confined to that. We can't try to not let ourselves be identified by our astrology, just keeping the focus here and then just a little ahead down the path rather than focusing on what is behind. And then over on the right is the Four of Wands. And what I see there is two vines that are intertwining, creating something stronger through that connection. And then when I see that, and then I reflect back over here, I see two lily of the valleys moving in the opposite direction, perhaps creating something not as strong. So there's something about that moving apart and moving together, moving apart and moving together, and allowing that to kind of organically be a part of your journey. And from the words of the Creator for the Six of Cups, we have symmetrical hearts in a world stemming out. And for the Four of Wands, with a partner entwined, create, pry, and vine. And so with the keyword that has come up here, this could very well be a message for a relationship reading exactly about that, to set your sights higher and seek these kind of qualities in the relationship. And if these kind of qualities don't presently exist, then maybe you have your answer to your question. The next combination is the Sacred Earth Oracle, with the Fountain Tarot. And I have used this deck before, way back in the second video. It's an absolutely stunning deck. The artwork is by Helena Nelson Reed. And actually, before we pull over 3 cards, I just want to show you this deck. So if you're not familiar with it, this deck, hopefully you can see here, has a lot of blues and purples and greens. It's fully saturated color. So that's kind of one of the reasons it looks really good with the fountain. And so energetically, it feels harmonious with the Fountain Tarot. And even though we kind of have blues, a lot of blues, which tend to be cool, there's something about it that really complements this deck. And so the first card is motion. And I'm sensing a real organic energy, something that is stirring deep within, arising to the surface. And we have Ace of Coins here. So to really trust in your heart as you step forward, and there's a real sense of embracing too. So embracing this project, embracing this new idea, embracing this opportunity with your whole heart, right? To set it in motion from your heart, from the core of your being, like something like that. It just feels really, really beautiful. And organic just feels like the perfect word for this reading. And then we have the Two of Wands. This always looks like a pair of chopsticks to me in this deck. And with the Two of Wands, there is, I don't know if urgency is the right word, but it's a time to step forward. It really is. Like we need to decide if we're going to go this way or if we're going to go this way. And it's really, I feel in the two, it is just on the verge of, you can do whatever you want to do, and it's time for you to step forth and to really feel that sense of, and I almost see this little ball here, this beautiful, and I see a spherical crystal ball kind of emerging right out of the center of your heart. It feels, ooh, and look at this. I kind of look at the center here too. It's almost like this ball came from the center of this magical coin here. Okay, let's do another one. The backs of the cards look stunning together too. Yeah, this artist, oh, Helena Nelson Reed, her work is amazing. So friction. Friction. So what would you expect, right? You'd expect a 5 to kind of show up here, or a card that's going to help you understand the root of the friction, the source of the friction, or how you can move through the energy of this friction. And when the Magician comes up, this is really a time to understand that you've got this. You have all the tools. You have all the resources. So maybe this is about stepping out of a sense of victimhood. I hate to say things like that, but to really take action and become your own creator, become and if we're moving forth from the previous reading, there is that sense of something being born, something coming forth. And here's the 9 of Cups. So you have so much potential. There is just so much there. So why are you focusing on the friction? Now, is the friction necessarily negative? Did the friction need to happen so you could awaken to this new idea, so that you could step into your own power, so that you could become your own manifestor, your own creator? Like when we get a challenging word, one of the things for me is to not always go to the negative. So maybe the friction isn't necessarily, it's something that was necessary to spur you on. I also see the breath here. And the breath might be the source of the relief. The breath might be a way to release the tension so that you can, kind of step in a new way. The other thing too is in the background, like on the backs of these cards, we have this gorgeous green color, which looks really, really amazing with the fountain. And I find that when you pair decks that energetically match with the colors, the frequency of the colors match, you get, like, look at those 2 cards together. That's beautiful. They just have a way of talking. Now you'll find with this Sacred Earth Oracle, the facings are excellent. Very few of the figures in the paintings face forward. So you can always bring in that to your reading. Lots and lots going on here. So we have there's feathers, there's moons, there's planets, there's cycles, there's a lot of motion. And you can see the moon up at the top. You can see different, right? There's all kinds of different things going on here. So something is happening. Something is being stirred up. And I would expect to see a judgment card here, right? But we have the star. And the star is to her back. So you may or may not choose to bring that in. And also the figure in the star is moving away from the figure in the Revolution card. And look at the energy, the frequency of these 2 colors, because that might be something that helps to illuminate your question. And she is moving toward the Knight of Cups. And so that's where the answer may lie, is in the energy of the Knight of Cups. And so embracing the aspect of yourself that speaks to the Knight of Cups. And that might be an aspect of yourself that is necessary to allow to come to the surface so that this revolution can be actualized. And I feel always inspired. We've already done 3. Let's do 1 more. I just love this deck. I always feel so inspired by this deck. I feel like it inspires queerance. It's just it's such a gorgeous deck. And I love that heart. Even though it is a glass heart, which can be, again, cold. So we have the mountain in the background. We have the ice of the mountain, and these 3 swords are somehow, through the heat, have pierced this glass. And often that's the kind of dialogue I have with myself. Sometimes it's aloud. Sometimes it's eternal, to get to the source, to get to the answer of the question, to get to the root of what's underlying the reason for doing the reading in the first place. And look at that keyword, brilliance. That's a pretty sweet keyword. And she is facing, so look at all these fiery energetic colors here, facing this very fiery card here. And we have two challenging cards on the other side of this brilliance card. So what are you going to allow to emerge? It's a little cooler over here next to the heart and a little warmer over here next to the Five of Wands. And again, I said this earlier, the Five of Wands isn't necessarily a card of conflict. It might be that stimulation that is needed to inspire the brilliance. And the Three of Swords may also, even though it is tragic, even though there was pain that was experienced, perhaps that is your muse. And you can allow that pain to be your muse for the book that you're going to write or the painting that's going to take your art to a whole new level. The next combination is the Empathic Oracle by Michelle Motuzis and Steve Wilson. And on the outside is Ciolo Thompson's Other Kin Tarot. And there is something about the blue borders of this deck that I really, really like. And its colors work beautifully with the Other Kin. One thing I didn't say when I started this video was before I do these demonstrations, I shuffle and I clear the decks and I have a little chat with the decks and ask them to participate in this process, because part of this process is showing you how well these decks talk to each other. And I feel like their energy is always cooperative, and I feel so grateful not only to have these cards in my collection, but to be here on this journey with you. Containers. Ooh, and you could read this also as 42 containers. That's a lot of containers. So why are the containers necessary? Have you created the containers? Have the containers shown up? These are all some of the questions that might arise for you. And there's also something like, look at all these containers here. And then there's the black space between the containers. So depending on the question, that might be there's just so many different ways you could go with that. Okay, and we have a 4 here, which creates a boundary as well too, right? So the 4 creates that sense of boundary, that container. It does, of course, create stability, but it also creates protection. It creates a wall. And why is that? Perhaps that's completely necessary at that time. You need to be in that container for the process of respite, for restoration, for to take time to integrate. And I think the problem with containers is that sometimes that we forget that we've created them and we allow them to stay around a little bit too long. So this is a process, right? The container is a process. And we, as long as we're using it for its higher purpose, then, it's a good thing. But we need to always check in with the cards, check in with the reading to see, which side of the coin we're looking at. And then the star is looking towards the containers. And I just feel that a very supportive energy here. It's a very gentle reading. It's like giving you permission. It's giving you permission to step into the container. And right now, that's exactly where you need to be. And yes, you will find hope. And that's where your transition is going to happen. Just don't stay there too long. This is lovely, lovely cardstock. Another deck that I love to touch. It's matte and luscious. Yeah. So that's really, shielding, shield. What does the shield represent for you? Is it a family crest? Is it a symbol? Is it a defensive mechanism? Is it something to do with your shamanic practice, right? There's all kinds of questions. So, and when you go in as a reader, sometimes it is worthwhile asking the querent, if the querent is present, or even if you're doing an email reading, to ask the querent, what does a shield represent for you? Because it might be really relevant. I love. It's really, really subtle, but we've got this red color and this red color. Just chatting here. So 10 of Wands, and that little mouse has got so much, well, it's not a mouse actually, packed onto its back, its whole life, its food, its shelter perhaps, everything is being carried. perhaps this creature is on its way to a new place, and the journey just feels like it's gone on and on and on. And maybe this mouse is looking for a shield. Maybe the mouse is looking for that sense of protection and hasn't found it yet. And now or maybe this represents family, a family crest, and maybe the mouse is moving toward the family crest. And so this is part of reading intuitively. You need to allow the pictures to tell a story, and don't feel like, oh, because I didn't read the guidebook, or I'm not relying on what I learned when I studied Waite Smith or when I studied Marseille, that I'm doing, like, something wrong is happening here, because it's not. This is energy, and the energy of the cards needs to come forth. Just like that little bit of green on the left is talking to the green in the shield, and that little bit of yellow behind the chameleon is talking to that little bit of yellow in the shield. And that chameleon is sitting there on that 6 of Wands saying, look at me. Usually the chameleon is hiding, but I feel like the chameleon is standing there in the fire saying, look at me, look at me. And so what is that about? And the shield perhaps has been laid down. So these are all just, I don't know, I find it so interesting when you step away from what it is you're supposed to say when cards come up, because there is no supposed to. Ooh, this is a tricky one, gaslighting. So if you're not familiar with the term gaslighting, that might be something that you want to look up, because it is a psychological term that may or may not be familiar to the querent. So the first step is to perhaps define gaslighting, go back to the original movie to give some examples to find out if this is indeed something that is familiar to the querent, because this is obviously going to be a tricky reading, and this is beyond the scope of this particular video. But, oh dear, when these challenging topics do arise, and the candle is going out. So the messages are compounding here, right? So this is a very tricky reading. And so I would be taking my time to define gaslighting, giving examples of gaslighting, and then specifically talking to the energy of the Devil card and how that is coming up, either reflecting the energy of the querent, herself, himself, or whether this represents another on the outside. And then over here on the right side of the reading, I'm kind of getting chills. Oh my goodness. We have the 7 of Cups. So there's this really something very powerful happening here. There's a sense of illusion for sure. When this depth of reading comes up, the first thing that I would do is to make sure that the querent, if they're with you in person, has time to unpack and to process and to integrate this reading, and that they're not going to be running out the door in 15 minutes, because this is a big message that you don't want to deliver and then have them disappear. And then I would very gently explain the overall theme of what was going on here, and then perhaps shuffle another deck of cards to expand the reading. Okay, fresh candles. Let's do one more with this combo, because I think there's something about the energy of these two decks that's pretty powerful here. Maybe a little too deep for these demo readings, but let's carry on. Clearing. I see a smudge wand. I do. But also I see, I'm looking here almost as if this is the tip to sit on a bow. Depends, right? It depends what you see. It depends what's coming up in the other cards. And these little details may or may not be important to the reading. Also the color of the feathers. So what do those colors of feathers, what do they have to say to you? And if there's anything about the gold background, because that might be important. Sorry, I'm laughing because of the peacock. These don't look like peacock feathers to me, but there's something going on here, because this is, I don't know whether this is a peacock or a peahen, but the feathers are not colored. The feathers are not illuminated. So why are the feathers not colored in this picture, but we've got the colorful feather here? And I'm looking at the green. And I might just go to my chakra references and go to the green of the heart space, the anguish, the pain, the grief, the less than the conditional love, right? And all of that ache that lives in the heart. The suit of air. So air is connected to the heart in the chakra system. So I might completely leave the Waite-Smith meaning behind and just go with whatever is arising in the story. Because to me, clearing, grief, heart, pain, leaving something, right? It's time. It's time to do some work in releasing that energy. And for me, as the kind of reader that I am, one of the things I try to do when I get challenging readings is to leave the, oh my goodness, leave the querent with some homework, with some things to do. So they're not just leaving here overwhelmed. And even if they have recorded the reading and they will listen to it again and again, I find it's really important. It's my gift is to give them something to do with the reading when they leave here, not just be overwhelmed or have something confirmed, right? Whether it's a challenging reading or just a confirmation reading, I think either way, it's my job to give them something to go home with. And so yeah, so that Five of Cups kind of confirms that there's something that needs to definitely be left behind, but there is something really beautiful that is ahead. So that hopefully will give the querent a sense of hope. But it feels like a lot of work to do. Thank you for joining me today, and let me know how each of these combos spoke to you. Angels and Ancestors with Ophidia Rosa, the Fountain Tarot with the Sacred Earth Oracle, and the Other Kin Tarot with the Empathic Oracle. Stay well, my friends. Namaste.